Hey there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting dodo birds and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, please smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies. You have consent. You know what he would do. If you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, go ahead and knock that out while you're here. All right, Deadleg, two things I want to talk with you about today. One of them is obviously a big headline from earlier in the week. Emoni Bates arrested, charged with 2 felonies. We'll get to that. But the first thing I wanted to touch on is a report from The Athletic that said the NBA and the NBA Players Association are expected to agree to move the age eligibility for the NBA draft from 19 down to 18, which would basically get rid of the so-called one-and-done rule. And now Woj subsequently tweeted, not so fast. We're not there yet. Right. But it could get done, but we're not there yet. So, who knows? But at this point, there does seem to be some momentum that this will eventually go away, perhaps in time for the 2024 NBA draft. So for the sake of a September conversation, let's say that it actually does go away, the one-and-done rule, and high school players are allowed to enter the NBA draft as they once were. I think you and I agree on this. Not a great thing for college basketball. Also not a devastating thing for college basketball. It'll be fine. We'll miss out on some of the best talents, but the sport, somebody will fill those uniforms up. The sport will be fine, just like it was fine from 1995 through 2005. But it's not great to miss out on what would be, the next Kevin Durant, the next Lonzo Ball, the next Derrick Rose, so on and so forth.
Yeah, when we put a bow on this conversation in a couple minutes, I do just want to loop around to what Woj was reporting, because I do think that's relevant for our listeners. So we'll touch on the logistics of if and when this is going to happen, because I also think that is important. But for the purposes of talking about this in terms of it being an inevitability, and let's just say hypothetically it becomes reality in 2024. If that were to be the case, this would have to be ratified through discussions in the CBA, I think by December. It would not be good for college basketball. Would it be the end of the sport? No. If and when this comes to pass, will there be drive-by commentators that will say, this is yet another, this is, the fourth nail in college basketball's coffin? They will say that. They will be incorrect. The sport will be just fine. It is followed by millions and millions of people, be it alumni or sidewalk alumni. That's not going to change. There always have to be leading scorers. There always have to be Final Four teams, national champions. Players will still get drafted out of college. There will be unexpected one-and-done players. There'll be someone that will go to college out of high school and be the 65th ranked prospect or the 74th ranked prospect or the 37th ranked prospect. They won't have a path to go right to the NBA, but then they will be amazing in 1 year of college and change their stock from an undrafted player to someone projected to go in the top 25 or the top 40 picks. And they will be an amazing story when that happens. The sport will have that. But that being said, Kevin Durant, Greg Oden, Eric Gordon, Michael Beasley, Derrick Rose, Kevin Love, Drew Holiday, DeMar DeRozan, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Derek Favors, Lance Stephenson, Kyrie Irving, Tobias Harris, Anthony Davis, Austin Rivers, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Bradley Beal, Nerlens Noel, Andrew Wiggins, Julius Randle, Aaron Gordon, Jabari Parker, D'Angelo Russell, Ben Simmons, Brandon Ingram, Jaylen Brown, Karl Anthony Towns, Jaleel Okafor, Lonzo Ball, Jason Tatum, De'Aaron Fox, Bam Adebayo, Malik Monk, Trae Young, DeAndre Ayton, Marvin Bagley, Zion Williamson, R.C. Barrett, Vernon Carey Jr., Anthony Edwards, Cole Anthony, Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley Jr., Scotty Barnes, Jalen Suggs, Chet Holmgren, and Paolo Banchero.
It's possible we get none of those. None of those guys would have come to college if the one-and-done rule didn't not force them, never force them, but certainly nudged them that direction.
That's 48 names. It's an incomplete list, and that's only players since 2006 who were either a top 10 prospect coming out of high school, or if they weren't a top 10 prospect, they either became an All-American or were a high-end lottery pick. You could expand that another 15 to 20 names of notable one-and-done freshmen. You could expand it another 15 to 20 names, Parrish, getting closer to really 80 to 85 names among players who were star freshmen or star into superstar freshmen into sophomores who otherwise would not have come to college, period. And losing those names is undeniably a negative hit. All those names are listed. I had them at the ready because we have a dribble handoff that published on Tuesday at cbssports.com. I really wanted to get through all 48, but that's a big old. I tried to Ace Ventura it, but it was too big of a list there. You get those names in college basketball, it makes the sport better. You have national players of the year, you have All-Americans, you have national champions, you have national freshmen of the year, you have players who changed the trajectory of their programs and made the sport better. You will never be able to convince me that college basketball was worsened by the NBA's age limit being increased from 18 to 19 years old. I don't think that's the case whatsoever. It's just because guys aren't staying 3-4 years the way they did in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s. Yes, that was a better time for college basketball, but that era could not have been avoided whether the age limit was changed or not. So the sport will be fine. It will survive, but it will be lessened. The wattage will not be as high. We will still have stars, but you and I both well know that there will be players as 16 or 17-year-olds that, become top 5 in their given high school class and who are seen on the recruiting trail. And instead of being recruited by John Calipari or John Shire or Tommy Lloyd or Kenny Payne and just go on, Bill Self, go on down the list, instead of being recruited by those coaches and getting college buzz, who is on your list, where might you go, getting fan bases engaged in their college decision, it will be fait accompli that those players will now just be saying, I'm going to go to the NBA instead. That does have certainly an effect on college basketball. There will not be the names heading in that will be as big. Yes, there will still be freshmen. Maybe the best ranked freshman will be 12th in the country or 14th in the country. And there'll be some anticipation for that, but it doesn't carry the same amount of cachet that Cade Cunningham, Zion Williamson, Jalen Suggs going to Gonzaga the way that he did when he could have played college football. They had plenty of buzz when he entered. Trae Young going to Oklahoma, doing what he did, winning Peach Jam, that had plenty, not to mention all the Kentucky and Duke guys. You heard the list there. So it will be a negative impact if and when it happens. Again, I want to get to that part in a second here, but I do think we agree more than we disagree, Parrish, on the product of the sport and it being able to survive. But this kind of undeniably, unquestionably removing a certain cachet to college basketball that is clearly bettered by having.
I guess if I were trying to be more specific, I would say, yes, it lessens the sport because it takes a lot of talent that would otherwise be here, probably, and it just won't be here. But I don't know that it makes any tangible difference with the sport, if that makes sense. I believe if you go back and look at the data from 95 to 2005, which is when Kevin Garnett, was the first person in a long time to enter the NBA draft out of high school.
It's trivia time since
the 70s.
Was it the 70s?
I believe. I could look it up. I didn't.
I don't know the answer. So.
Well, your trivia time, you have no idea.
Yeah, it had been a while. It had been a while. In my mind, it was like Sean Kemp, but didn't Sean Kemp technically go JUCO for a year or something?
Yes,
like that?
yes. Sean Kemp definitely did something he was in college.
You were on a roll and I interrupted you. Keep going.
It's fine. I think if you look at the data from 95 to 2005, the television ratings didn't drop off. Attendance at games didn't drop off. Clearly, we missed out on some of the best talents coming out of high school. They would have been amazing to watch in college. But I don't believe it impacted who watched the sport and how many people watched the sport. But we did miss out on some high-level guys in that era. If you left it up to me, I would like to have a rule in place, for the purposes of college basketball, have a rule in place that did it, put these guys on college campuses at least for a year. But I fundamentally think that's a wrong thing to do. I've always been consistent on this. I love having Kevin Durant and Zion Williamson in college, but I don't think they ever should have had to go to college. And I know they weren't forced into college, but it certainly nudged that direction. There's always other options, but college was always the best option if you can't enter the NBA draft, or at least for most people, it was the best option if you can't enter the NBA draft. So I think it's fundamentally right to let high school graduates go, even if I do think it comes at the expense on some level of college basketball. What's interesting is that the people who argue against this, they highlight these mistakes that were made in that 11-year window of either franchises using first-round picks on guys that did nothing, or guys entering the draft and then not getting picked. And, oh, my God, what have they done to their life? On that note, I'd say two things. First, I don't have any interest in trying to save high school graduates from making bad decisions or misguided decisions by putting rules in place. That's all sorts of high school graduates make bad decisions in all walks of life. I don't think we need a rule to protect, high school graduate basketball players from themselves. Most of them will make us intelligent decision as it pertains to entering the draft or not, just like they did in that 11-year window. Some will make misguided decisions, but that's okay. There's going to be 18-year-old theater students who make misguided decisions, who rather than go to college decide to move to Hollywood and try to break into the industry. It'll work out for some, it won't work out for most. I'm happy to let parents be in charge of guiding their 18-year-old high school graduates through the decision-making process. I don't think we need a rule to save people from themselves. Secondly, what I would say is it is often mischaracterized about what that 11-year window was. People are like, they'll focus on one or two guys that were total bums. But broadly speaking, in that 11-year window from 95 to 2005, do you realize that if your favorite NBA team merely turned in a card every time it was their turn to pick and said, we're taking best high school prospect available, that franchise would have had the best roster in the NBA that would not have even been close? Broadly speaking, when you used a first...
Phrase that again. How did you just phrase that?
From 1995 to 2005, that 11-year window,
right,
when players were entering the draft at a high school, if an NBA franchise, whether you were picking first, third, 17th,
okay,
just when hey, we're not even watching the draft. You just tell us when it's our turn to pick. All right, you're on the clock. We'll take best high school player available, whoever that is, whoever 24/7 Sports or Rivals or Scout or anybody, whoever they say is the best high school prospect available right now, we'll take that guy. If you would have I did this project one time. I tried to find it last night, could not find it. But it was basically, if you just handed in a card that said best high school prospect available, you would have had the best roster in the NBA. Not even close. The truth is, if you spent a first round pick on a high school prospect, it wasn't a risk as much as it was the smartest thing you could have done. Check this out. There were 29 players selected in the first round out of high school between 1995 and 2005. 29 players. 8 of them made at least one All-Star game. 27.6% of high school players drafted in the first round literally became NBA All-Stars. And there's at least 5 guys in that group who are guaranteed Hall of Famers. They're either already in or they will be. There's one that's a little iffy. But there's you could reasonably argue of the 29, 6 became Hall of Famers. Better than 1 out of every 5 high school players selected in the first round in that window became Naismith Memorial Hall of Famers or either will. Trivia time.
Go.
Name me the 5 sure bet Hall of Famers and then see if you can identify the one that's kind of on the list, although I think you can make an argument he belongs in.
Is the latter Amari Stoudemire?
That's right.
Okay.
McDonald's All-American, Rookie of the Year, 6-time NBA All-Star. Now, you might say, I don't know about that. Tim Hardaway just got in as a 5-time NBA All-Star. Mm-hmm. So I think you can make a case for Amari Stoudemire, but that's the iffy one. The other 5 are guaranteed. They're either already in or they're no doubters.
Garnett and Kobe.
Right.
Is there anyone in that 3-year period, 2-year period that I need to know? Or are we talking after that?
I think there's one more in that range.
Okay. Straight out of high school. Curveball on me here.
Amari Stoudemire, iffy, but probably. Mm-hmm. These other 5, there's no doubt.
There's no doubt. KG's in, KG's Kobe's in. Is anyone else in?
I think there's one more guy who's already in.
Let me see. Who's gotten in recently that would apply here? No. I'm thinking GP here. I'm scanning the brain. 96, 97, 98. Who would have been? Give me the team he was drafted to, if you know it.
Magic.
Drafted to the Magic.
Maybe not. That's the way I remember him. Let me.
Drafted to Orlando. Drafted to Orlando? Oh well, Dwight Howard. But he's not in that. He's not there. He's one of them, but he's not in the range. I don't think he's your.
No, not drafted by the Magic. Played with the Magic. Drafted by the Raptors.
Thank you. But Dwight's one of the other 5, I presume, right?
Yes, he's guaranteed Hall of
Famer. Drafted by the Raptors, played with the Magic, drafted by the Raptors, and we're talking expansion era Raptors here.
Yeah, he's a 7-time All-Star.
McGrady.
That's the list. It's and then you know.
Aren't we missing one? I got 4, right? I'm missing one, right?
You got Kobe Bryant, Tracy McGrady, Kevin Garnett, Dwight Howard, Amari Stoudemire as iffy.
Okay, I thought there was one more in there.
Gotcha. Well, there is one more. I mean, Jesus Lord.
Jesus? Did he come out in 97? JC? He didn't go to high school. He didn't go to college.
You really do not. You can't name the other one.
Kobe, KG, RJ Barrett, Tracy McGrady, Dwight Howard. We're missing one more. Came out of high school. Yeah, I'm gonna know it, but I'm trying to scan through here. Patrick Ewing.
This is outrageous.
I haven't gotten there yet. Do I need to know the team, or is it that obvious?
My God.
I don't even. I'm just confused why you're so vexed over this. Like I'm thinking through this. Like, what are we talking about? Do you need to tell me the team?
I shouldn't need to tell you anything.
KG, Kobe, Dwight, Amari, Patrick Ewing, RJ Barrett, Yao Ming. I'm thinking here. Oh, LeBron James.
LeBron James. Very good.
What?
You couldn't get the king?
It's so obvious. It just doesn't even come to mind. And I was thinking, I'm going through the 90s. Like I was trying to think, is there someone else obvious in the 90s that I was missing? So apologies.
Yes, like there's 5 in that 11-year window. There's 5 no doubters: Kobe, Tracy, LeBron, KG, Dwight Howard, Amari Stoudemire. I think. So back to the point. Don't ever let somebody tell you it was too risky drafting high school guys. It was the safest thing you could do is spend a first-round pick on a high school player. It was the smartest and safest thing you could do. 27.6% of them drafted in the first round became NBA All-Stars. And if you believe Stoudemire will eventually be in, 20.7% became Hall of Famers.
T-Mac, man. How about that? Okay. I think there's something to that. I don't know if that, ensures future success there. I did make a few calls on this. And what's interesting about this entire issue is that it's, in talking to the few people I talked to who work in the NBA, it feels as though the impetus driving this might be just the NBA saying, should we not afford this luxury again? That's pretty much it. Like the Players Association, if you do this, there's going to be, a veteran in the 7th year or 10th year or 13th year that's going to lose a roster spot. There's going to be older players. So the Players Association has actually a lot of impetus not to do this. The NBA wanted to get out of this world to begin with because they didn't want scouts going to grassroots tournaments and being in high school gyms all the time. The GMs don't necessarily love this because they actually like getting the additional year to evaluate the players. You get more data. If you can get that, you certainly want to take it there. It's and oh, by the way, like, would it be the right thing to let players do this? Yeah, sure. It's also the NBA is a private organization with a very public face. It has the right to do this. If it wants to say that it doesn't want to have anyone be able to be eligible to play in its league in competition against the greatest people in the world until you hit the age of 19, like, I just find nothing wrong with that, by the way. I don't find anything wrong with that, taking that approach. Football obviously does it from mostly a physical development perspective, but you can say from a mental and physical approach, if we just want to keep it at 19. Now, are we going to be there? I don't know, which brings me back to this other point here. When is this going to happen? I did have someone tell me earlier today, like, I'll still believe it when I see it, because this has been in the air for like 4 years and it hasn't come to pass. And Woj's reporting, I do think, is quite relevant on this, because, going by his report, it's this idea that franchises have traded away picks in the next 2, 3, 4 years, with the terms of those trades for these picks being that, there wouldn't be high school players available. Now, whether or not that stands up in these discussions, I don't know. But I'll read you the exact wording that Woj put out when he reported this late on Monday night. He said, if one and done has changed, it's expected the starting date would be several years into the future. To me, that does not signal 2024, in part because of commitments already made by teams to trade future draft picks under the current framework of the 19 and over system. Given the reporter involved here, I happen to believe there might be something. That's not to say it can't happen in 24, and maybe they get this done, but I also and see it, believe it when I see it mode on this. And as many years as college basketball can be afforded to have this 19 and under rule in place, the better I believe it'll be.
Somebody else makes a good point in the comments on YouTube, which is a point I've referenced before. For the NBA, I think it's the right thing to do. I'm speaking strictly in terms of right and wrong, fair and unfair. I think it's the right thing to allow high school graduates to enter the NBA draft, for better or worse. If you don't want to pick them, don't pick them. If they don't get picked, that's on them. I think it's the right thing to allow the LeBron James type talents to be in the draft if they want to, or anybody else if they want to. Some people will make bad decisions. That's fine. People in all walks of life make bad decisions. But I do think from the NBA perspective, you could reasonably argue it is better for the association if these guys, rather than enter the draft at a high school, actually go to college, because it's, and this is the point somebody made, it's free marketing for future NBA stars. Like, if Kevin Durant just entered the NBA draft at a high school, he'd have been the same dude, but he'd just been some skinny, tall guy who's obviously talented, but nobody knows who he is. But after being the national player of the year at Texas, playing on Big Monday every night, he was a star. And so when he was drafted, it was a big deal for that franchise. You immediately throw him on billboards, sell tickets. Like, Zion was kind of a phenom, even a YouTube phenom, before he got to Duke. But he became something altogether different after playing that 1 year at Duke, because he was in a Duke uniform in Cameron Indoor, on national television. What college basketball does for the NBA is super valuable, not just from the perspective of giving evaluators a new thing to evaluate, prospects against older players, going through a 30+ game season. There's benefit to all of that, as you noted. But the other benefit is that by the time these guys then get to the NBA, they are marketed household names. And that's good. That's good for the NBA. No, I don't think there's any question.
Last thing, if this happens, is G League Ignite going away? I mean, because at this point, someone told me earlier today that they don't know for sure if this is one thing leading to another, but the NCAA and having NIL, okay, NIL will be around for a few years before this comes into effect. But is this the NBA's response to NIL now and saying, we want to get these players? And I don't know if that's the case or not. It could be coincidental in timing, but if you told me that was a major factor in the decision making here on both sides of the table, I'd believe you, because NIL is obviously, it's a way of keeping some players, even if a lot of those players aren't desirable players, bigs, as we've talked about here before. But if you're the 15th ranked player in your high school class in 2026, and you've got the option between going to G League Ignite and getting 800,000, going to college, let's cut it in half, even let's just whatever, college 400,000, but playing for a top 10 program, or going in the NBA and chancing being drafted or not. I just don't see where G League Ignite fits in this. And so, listen, they're doing all they can, and they've certainly had a couple of really good talents in there, but this seems almost like it's going to go back to the way it was if we get to that point where elite prospects are either going to pick trying to kick it in the NBA right away, or hell, I can get I can get NIL money and I can play on a national stage and be on national television 20 to 25 times a year. Cause that's really what's happening now. I mean, agents are meeting with players going into their senior years of high school so that they can represent them when they get to college, be their agents if and when they can become professional. So just an, oh, by the way, an unintended consequence of the NBA making, if it does this, it invested millions upon millions into G League Ignite. I'm not convinced it'll exist by the end of the decade if we make this rule change.
And I do think name, image, and likeness, and we'll move on after this, could play a role in like keeping some of these guys who could reasonably enter the NBA draft, but decide not to. For instance, let's say you're a projected late first rounder, early second rounder coming out of high school, as the 4th ranked player in your high school class or something like that, 7th ranked, it doesn't matter. But, at Kentucky, you can get $2 million guaranteed. Or at Duke, you can get $3 million guaranteed. Like if name, image, and likeness money is really going to go to this extreme, then you might see somebody say, well, rather than risk being the 34th pick, and I'll get a contract, but like rather than deal with that, I'll just take $3 million from Kentucky. I've always wanted to play college basketball at least for a year. I'll take $3 million from Kentucky, then enter the next draft and see where we're at. Like it's not hard for me to imagine somebody turning down the draft to come to college for a significant amount of money. And don't ever forget Carmelo Anthony turned down the draft. He could have entered out of high school and, decided to go do 1 year at Syracuse.
As you know, GP, I mean, Syracuse, I want to say their first game or the second game of the year was against Memphis.
First game of the year at MSG.
Vitale on the call. Carmelo Anthony had tons of hype leading into that, wound up living up to it. They win a championship or whatever. And so that, that path once carried a lot of value and still, and to many extents, still does.
Let's move on. Former 5-star prospect Emoni Bates has been charged with 2 felonies. That's not great. We'll get into that story next. But first, a word from our partners.
The UEFA Champions League. 9 months of heart-stopping, hold-your-breath acceleration. While Mbappe shines in the city of lights, Benzema's racking up the hat tricks, and the Reds want more magic in Liverpool. This ain't amateur hour. This is the best of the best of the best. This is the UEFA Champions League. Stream every match live on Paramount+.
So former 5-star prospect Emoni Bates has been charged with 2 felonies. As the story goes, he was driving about 2 miles away from campus on Sunday night, got pulled over for a traffic violation, found a gun in the car. It had the serial number scratched off of it. That's not great. Again, charged with 2 felonies, which when you first hear about it, I waited. I don't think I ever tweeted about this, but I waited because I was like, people jumped on the initial story. Emoni Bates, gun in car, serial number, scraped off. And I was like, maybe there's more to the story. His attorney subsequently released a statement that suggests that there is. The attorney said that this was not Emoni Bates' car. It was somebody else's car. He borrowed somebody else's car, got pulled over, and they found the gun that did not belong to Emoni Bates. Emoni Bates didn't even know it was in the car. I guess my first question, and that's where we're at right now at this moment. That's all we know.
Well, yeah.
I guess my first question would be, what prompts the police to search the car? Like they can't search my car,
right?
Like I've had my car searched 1 time ever. I've been pulled over 50,000 times. You can't just search somebody's car for no reason. So why were the police searching the car in the first place? I'd like an answer to that question.
Well, I happen to know a police officer and asked this question because I was also curious. I was like, all right, this person doesn't follow college sports. I was like, can you just clue me in a little bit here as an officer of the law? And so he leveled and he said, it would just have to be suspicious behavior. Or, I am not saying this was the case. He's like, or if they smelled marijuana coming out of the car, like this, they could have easily just decided that's how they wanted to search. Right. Or he said, listen, could have gotten pulled over. If this is at night, you flash the light in. Sir, how we doing? And when you do that, and I'm not saying this is where it was, but if the gun was in sight in the passenger seat, and that's probable cause, just right then and there,
Dude, I've ever told you this story. The one time I
think you have, but go ahead.
My car searched. I had broken a big story back when I was at the Commercial Appeal newspaper. I was literally getting death threats. All right. And so my roommates, as a joke, bought me a little dart gun, like a pistol dart gun. And they're like, GP, you got to take this with you. You need to be locked and loaded at all times. Your life is in danger. And so stupidly, I'm like 23 years old, 24 years old. I've got a toy gun, literally a toy gun, shoved in between my car seats in the front, like sitting right in between my seat. And I just drove around like that. I don't even know why. It's stupid. And I got pulled over for a normal traffic violation. They were like, license, registration. I hand it to them. Next thing I know, the car door is ripped open and they are pulling me out of the car. And I'm like, yo, what is going on? And they're like, why do you have that gun right there? And I'm like, what? I'm startled. I have no idea what's going on. And I go, dude, that's a toy gun. That is a toy for a 6-year-old. But they reacted as if it were a real gun. And I had it right there. They took me, put me in the back of a cop car. Only time I've ever been in the back of a cop car, believe it or not. And they searched my whole car. And then at this point, like I knew I had messed up. You shouldn't have a toy gun sitting there. The cops are going to react to that. That was stupid. That's on me. That's on me. But then they come back to me and they say, okay, we're going to let you go this time. And that's when I got mad. I was like, let me go. What would be the alternative to letting me go? What did I do wrong? I had a toy in my car.
What will be the alternative to letting you go?
Like, what do you mean, let me go? I mean, I didn't mean like, what do you like, let me go? Like, hey, we could have got you on a charge, but we're going to let you go. Like, what were you going to charge me with? Carrying a toy gun? Like, this wasn't a situation where I had a 3-year-old kid it was his toy, but it could have been either way. When you said they could have looked in the car and saw a gun and reacted accordingly, that did happen to me, except it was a toy gun.
Unreal. You have shared that on the pod before. Steve Haney is Bates' lawyer. Last heard from in these parts on this podcast because he represented the charge and later pleaded guilty in the FBI case. I talked to Steve Haney multiple times in and around the Manhattan courtroom for the Southern District of New York. He is from Michigan, and so he is representing them. Yes, and he did tell the Associated Press, quote, I hope people can reserve judgment and understand there's a presumption of innocence. This was not his vehicle. This was not his gun. We're still gathering facts. I do want to point out, and shouts to Dan Wetzel, who actually retweeted this story shortly before we started our podcast. I'm glad we saw it because this actually could become material. And then we'll get to Bates' big picture. To whether or not Bates is currently suspended from all basketball activity. That is a prompt by EMU guidelines. So he's currently not able to engage in basketball activity as a student at EMU. But in January of 2021, the local county prosecutor announced a change to local policy. I'm going to read this real quick. This is from mlive.com. A policy that the office will no longer authorize possession of contraband charges that stem from pretext traffic stops. Eli Savin announced the policy Monday, January 18th, noting that the charges resulting from those traffic stops, like drug possession, possession of stolen property, and certain minor weapons possession charges, stem from racial profiling. The policy directive specifically states that the prosecutor's office will not file a possession of contraband charge if a search that uncovered the contraband stemmed from an infraction-related stop, which is the case here. Two things, though. One, I don't know if the fact that identification marks, aka the serial number on the gun being scratched off, impacts the status of this case as it pertains to this new statute or not, or if any marijuana was involved or not. But I believe marijuana is legal in the state of Michigan, so that should not be in play here. Regardless, there are obviously some questions that have not been answered yet. Why was Emoni Bates driving his friend's car? Will he get back on the court eventually? It's just, unfortunately, and this is an unfortunate byproduct of this, and you can't control how people think or react to the things that you do, I guess. But I heard from a few coaches in the past 24 hours that are like, man, Emoni Bates is on the fast track to being the next Lenny Cook. Lenny Cook being an infamous example of a once super, super highly touted prospect. In fact, once played against in a high profile grassroots game, played
the king,
LeBron James. Exactly. And those two players obviously took very divergent paths there. But I'm not going to make anything close to a leap in saying that because Emoni Bates had to spend a night in jail over this incident, that his college career is done. The story is done. It's not a positive development, that's for sure. We don't know if he did or did not know if the gun was in the car. at all. There are undoubtedly factors surrounding this story that have not been made public yet, that have not come to light. But I did see, I think this was The Athletic with Dana O'Neill, and Brendan Quinn pointed out that if he were to get charged and prosecuted in the case, the EMU student handbook actually would dictate that he would not be eligible to play basketball. So that does stand to be something in the future there. But all other things on this, GP, and then it's all yours. I've been told that actually since getting to Eastern Michigan, like, it's been really, really good. It's been more than copacetic. It's been great there. There was a little bit of, I guess, EMU's an Adidas school. Emoni's obviously been a Nike athlete forever, so that actually impacted when he could, like, officially sign them, announcing him being added to the roster. So there was a little bit of stuff with that, but for the most part, like, it has been a very happy marriage between the Bates family and that program. They are from the area. They are literally from Ypsilanti, where EMU is based. And here we have it. Like, you don't want to be caught in this kind of story, no doubt about it. GP, you well know over the past 2 decades of covering college basketball that the 1 month where coaches get a little freaked is this month. Players going back to school, they're not in practices, the offseason headlines getting in trouble over something. Like, this has been a thing in college basketball forever. And here's Bates. We wait on more. He will be in court, or at least scheduled to be in court. We'll see what's up with that statute or not in the first week of October.
I've seen people ask, like, big questions. Like, my first question would be, why did they search the car? Like, what was going on with that situation that made them think, so we're going to search your car? So that's interesting to me. We don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah.
If this is strictly, because I've seen some people be like, well, why would he be driving somebody else's car? I don't know. Young people do this. Like, I don't borrow other people's cars, but I can remember when I was young. I'm not saying what happened with Emoni Bates. I have no idea. But it's not outrageous to me to think of a plausible story where a 19-year-old was in somebody else's car. I can remember being at parties. It's like, hey, GP, we're going to run and pick up this stuff, but hey, you got me blocked in. Just take my car. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but
yes,
I've thrown my keys when I was younger, thrown my keys to a million different people, taken other people's keys. It's not impossible for me, or even difficult for me, to believe a story that, hey, Emoni he took this car, didn't know what the gun was in it, got pulled over. It's a bad situation. It looks bad. We all agree, but like, he was just borrowing somebody's car. It is nothing more than that. And if that's what this is, then it won't make me think any differently of anything, and it shouldn't make anybody else. But if that story doesn't hold up, if the prosecutors come back and be like, all right, yeah, it was somebody else's car technically, but he's been driving that car for 3 weeks, or we have reason to believe, his fingerprints are on the gun, like if there's anything that comes back bad, then it's bad. Mm-hmm. But if it is as innocent as the lawyer presented it, then I think this is just a bad headline, but not necessarily the end of anything. But if prosecutors push back on those theories, then you've got real problems if you're Emoni Bates, because now suddenly you're once heralded prospect who was a bomb at Memphis. Now you're back at Eastern Michigan. You haven't measured well. You haven't shown yourself to be a good player in years. And now you've got at the very least, some really poor decision-making, on your Wikipedia page as well. Like, that's at some point NBA franchises say, I don't want to deal with this. Like, he hasn't been good in a while, got gun charges. We'll pass. And enough of them pass, you don't have a job in that league where forever people thought you were going to end up. Ultimately, for Emoni, assuming, let's just take the lawyer story at face value. If that's the story and this gets pushed away and handled one way or another and he's on the court, like we talked about before, if I were advising them, I would not have said go back home to Eastern Michigan. But that's what they did. I hope it works out. But it's going to have to really go incredibly well for him to get back to a place he seemed to be literally just a year ago. Think about this. A year ago today, most people thought Emoni Bates was going to be a future top 10 pick. And now I don't know that anybody thinks he's a future top 10 pick. The past year has been terrible for him. And, who knows where this is headed exactly, but it is certainly trending toward a pretty depressing 30 for 30.
Yeah, that's where it's trending toward. I would love for us to hop on a podcast in mid-December and say, "Look at this, man! You seeing this? Emoni Bates leads the MAC in scoring. He's at 24 points a game. Like this was just the reboot, the reset he needed." I would love for that to be a storyline that gets discussed this year, that actually materializes. But we'll have to wait and see on that. We'll see if the charges if they stick, if they're dropped, if this new statute that was put into place a year and a half ago plus winds up benefiting him. Because as it states here in the story from MLive, quote, another condition of the policy that must be met states that the prosecutor's office will not authorize charges if the same search that uncovered the contraband was obtained via the consent of the target of the search and no other independent probable cause, such as observed contraband in plain view, i.e., my words here, the gun on the passenger seat if it was there, or other.
Yeah, if you got a gun laying on the like if that's what happened, if the gun was visible to a police officer from outside the car, you're gonna have a hard time saying I didn't know there was a gun in the car.
Right. Yes. So we'll wait and see on that. He's scheduled to appear in court in October, early first week of October. We'll obviously, we'll update this story as it updates the next time it becomes relevant for us to podcast on. But that was the other big story. One real quick other one here. I just want to note this since we have talked about this on the podcast in the past, and I just happened to be talking to someone about this earlier today. The Pac-12 commissioner went on a podcast this week, actually, John Canzano and John Wilner, who both do a really good job at covering the Pac-12, which is set to become the Pac-10 here. And George Kliakoff, that commissioner, went on there, and he basically said Pac-10's not going to lose any more members to realignment. He said, listen, if I think schools would have left for the Big Ten, they would have left already. And then he also said later, I don't feel any sense of urgency at this point, regarding conference realignment. He said, no one's going anywhere. We're all together. We're all focused on this. We have runway to do it right as opposed to doing it quickly. That's good news. We have plenty of listeners in the Mountain and West Coast. And, certainly to say that on the record, you got to figure he would have, I don't know this for sure, GP, but I would figure that Kliakoff saying that has received some inspiring words at the very least from the presidents of the universities of, say, Washington and Oregon and maybe Phil Knight, because this will be an all-time Larry Scott level backfire if this does backfire, given the college football playoff is going to 12 with 6 automatic bids. It really doesn't behoove those Pac-12 schools unless you are going to stand to make so much more money to leave, which I'm skeptical of. It's a good thing for college sports and conferences as they are if the Pac-12 doesn't lose any more teams. I actually think it will look to expand. It's just a matter of does to add Gonzaga, any Mountain West schools. But anyway, that came down right before we podcasted. I figured I'd make the bumpy segue to at least give listeners that heads up, because I do think it's relevant, because I think one of the biggest speculations in college sports is like, what the hell is the Pac-12 going to be? Where's it going? Well, the commissioner says that they're set to stay in place, and we'll see if that comes to be.
Yeah, I bet you'd have said the same thing 6 months ago.
Okay, fair enough.
All right. I'll keep this simple. The only commissioners who actually know how this thing's going to go, Greg Sankey and Kevin Warren. They're the only, I'll listen to them.
Both have said they are not looking to expand on the record. So,
yeah, but it's semantics. We weren't looking to, but then this opportunity presented itself, and suddenly we felt like it was the smart thing to do. If you're the commissioner of the Pac-12, with all due respect, it ain't up to you what happens next.
It's absolutely not.
So you don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, it's I can appreciate the positivity, but I bet you if you could have talked to him 6 months ago, he would have said, we feel like we're in a great place going forward. We got an incredible football brand like USC, a magnificent basketball brand like UCLA, and we feel like we're headed into the strongest place we've ever been. I bet you that's what he would have said 6 months ago.
You're not wrong about that at all.
So, take that for whatever it's worth. Ultimately, Kevin Warren and Greg Sankey, the Big Ten commissioner and the SEC commissioner, those are going to be the dudes who decide what the Pac-12 looks like. It's up to them.
I would largely agree with that. You want to get out of here?
I do want to get out of here. I've had enough.
Let's do it.
You know how depressing it is? Try to squeeze in 18 holes before a podcast and then just...
You play golf today?
Yeah, of course I play golf.
Oh, to the live watchers. That's all right. I had to do. How about this real quick? We'll get out of here. But I'm getting back on that bike game. When's the last time you rode a bike? Just like I want to get out on a bike and go for a ride. When's the last time you did that?
Peloton?
No, outdoors.
Oh no, I would never do that. People die.
You've done it.
People die all the time just riding their bike. It's crazy. Like people just like they'd be like, he was going through an intersection, got hit by a car.
Trails, you know, bike trails around Mississippi.
I'm sure we got bike trails.
Trails,
We got all sorts of trails. But like people ride their bikes on the streets, and then I hear all the time, "Oh yeah, you hear about Joe? No, what happened? Oh, he was out riding his bike, got hit by a car. Now he's dead. What? Joe's dead? It happens. That's real.
I know it happens. This is not what's stopping you from doing this.
Yes, it is.
This is not what's stopping you from doing this.
I have reached a point in my life.
Your fear of being killed while riding a bike is why you don't ride a bike.
Well, also, I'd rather just like sit down.
Yeah.
You know, but like I would not ride. Like I see people riding. I just like sitting down more than I like riding a bike.
You do sit down on a bike most of the time.
Yeah, but I like sitting down and like kicking my feet up.
Yeah.
I like laying down. That's what I meant to say.
All right.
And
the point
I see people riding these city bikes in New York, and I'm just like, all it takes is one car not paying attention. All it takes is one car not paying attention. They're going to smack you. I'm just trying not to get smacked on a bike.
And yet, do you not DoorDash? Do you not Uber Eats? Do you not put these people's lives in danger by enabling them? I mean, you're giving them a working living, which is good. But if you're that concerned, I don't know.
Well, I think anybody can hit a bike rider, not just an Uber Eats guy. It doesn't have to be
but I'm saying you're putting one more bike on the street every time you do it. That's all.
But I'm trying to get my Mexican food delivered.
Okay.
You know, I'm not trying to go pick up my own food.
I don't do the Peloton, but I do have a stationary bike. But no, my next door neighbor was kind enough to let me borrow his bike just to see if I wanted to get a feel for it again. And it's invigorating. Have been loving it, but who the hell knows how it happened? But one of the tires went flat. So you played golf. I had to go to REI get a little tire repair. So it worked out.
Yeah. The point is, everything's been a rush since the moment I woke up this morning, and then just go out and
shot a 104. You hate it, don't you?
It was not a 104, but it was not good. It was definitely not a 104, but it was just I just want to be good at something, you know.
You are good at many things.
I don't like laying down.
Sitting down, kicking your feet up.
Yeah, I'm gonna go lay down right now. Actually, I feel like I deserve it before the kids get home from
school.
I'm
gonna go for a bike ride. I should be back for our podcast.
Well, that's why you're you and I'm me. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Huck. Shouts to Larnell. Shouts to all the cyclists out there.
You know how many people listen? You know what? Find us. In fact, as we get out of here, before GP finishes off this read, if you were ready to be like, GP's going to do shouts, let me delete this podcast, move on. No. Couple things. One, shouts to the cyclists for sure, because I got to imagine plenty of people, because when I hop on this bike right now, I'm going to bring up a podcast or two. Bring up a little pod, right?
Oh, yeah, people listen to the podcast while cycling. I know that, but cyclists get killed a lot. That's the other thing. Do you see the murder down in Austin?
No.
Oh, man.
That's not where I was going. You're going way dark turn right now. No.
Mariah Wilson. She got murdered. She was a gravel cyclist, world class.
Okay, that I didn't realize that was no. What I was
She went to Austin for a race. She got shot twice in the head.
All right,
it's a true story.
Sincere thoughts and condolences to her and her loved ones. I did not see that.
It's a sad story.
What I was going to say was, it's a devastating story, man. Gosh,
it's a wild story too. You should read about it. She went swimming. She had a little brief romance with a guy cyclist, and the guy cyclist's girlfriend allegedly was tracking his phone, and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to do something," and he clearly went swimming all day with Mariah Wilson, and then dropped her off at her friend's house where she was staying. Minutes later, she was shot dead, and the guy's girlfriend is charged with the murder.
Aye.
She fled the country. She went to Costa Rica. We had to go find her in Costa Rica, bring her back. Now she's facing murder charges.
Man, you're always up on these just outrageous stories.
Can't get it. I can tell you everything about that story. Caitlin Armstrong is the alleged murderer.
Are you trying to pivot this to a true crime podcast?
No, I've already solved it. Caitlin Armstrong, I believe, murdered Mariah Wilson.
All right. That's not the official opinion.
Emoni Bates has a much better chance of getting off than Caitlin Armstrong. If you want me to tie this back to basketball,
what I was going to say was, shouts to the cyclists.
Yep.
If you listen to this podcast while riding your bike, it's stationary or traditional. Go ahead and leave a 5-star review. Tell us that, or we've hit this lull. So the plan here is a little mailbag next week if we don't have any headlines here, and at the advisement of our superiors, if you're listening to this live, the email account is not live yet, but it will be ready by the end of Tuesday. So I understand that there are plenty of people that aren't on social media that listen to the podcast. So if you want to supply a question, or I'm told we might be asked to incorporate the occasional, you could be on the Ion College Basketball YouTube channel with a 10-second question on video. If you want to supply an email and say, hey, Norlander and GP, I was thinking.
Tell us more about Caitlin Armstrong and what she allegedly did.
We'll see if that gets it past the filter. But yeah, sure. Or hey, listen, you guys had done this awesome shoot-around series, but you didn't touch on my team here. What are your thoughts on this? Maybe we'll include it, and maybe we'll show you. So if you want to email the show, you can. In that email address, you ready? Type it down. Write it down. Shouts to cbs@gmail.com. Shouts to cbs@gmail.com. And if it's particularly slow next week, I think we might do a mailbag extravaganza. Send love letters, correspondence, advice. GP will certainly take any kind of video that you want to send in, particularly. I'll just leave that unsaid. And so, hey, close out the show, GP. That's all I got.
Shot her twice in the head.
Oh my gosh! I had us
once in the chest,
right back in the lane we needed to be at.
It's a rough deal. It's a rough deal.
Thoughts and condolences, because that's horrendous.
Please subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts. 5 stars, nice review. There's more of a. Honestly, I don't feel like this is the one we should be asking for 5 stars on. This is not a 5-star podcast today.
I think it's pretty close.
Didn't feel like it to me.
That's because you shot a 104.
It was not a 104. It was just.
Don't even tell me you shot like a 93. There's no chance you're getting back and recording this podcast having shot a 93.
I just woke up and I thought today's going to be the day where I set the course record.
The course record?
My personal course record. And then it just went bad, right? It's just at least I'm not facing gun charges, Let's look at the positive. At least I'm not facing felony gun charges. Life's not that bad, Could be worse. I could be facing felony gun charges. On that note, we'll talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.